Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 12th season of the Spanish Football Podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides, joined as ever by Sid Lowe, and we're back for another season talking about Spanish football. Hello, Sydney.
Good morning, Philip. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. Even for us, what we're doing is a little bit ridiculous. I'll let the listeners into a little secret. We are recording very, very early on Monday morning, perhaps the earliest we've ever recorded a podcast. So we're a little bit bleary-eyed, and hopefully we're still sharp enough to assess what happened at the weekend. But yeah, it's early, and I'm still having my coffee. So hopefully we'll
you've actually managed to have a coffee. I've not reached that point yet. I'm not even dressed.
Not.
I mean, I'm not going to stand up at this point, put it that way.
Me neither. Okay, so we are in various states of undress, but we're here to talk about what happened on Matchday 1 in LALIGA EA Sports. Friday night, the first game of the season, saw the mighty Rayo Vallecano beat Girona 3-1 at Montilivi. My boy Fruity G, that's Jorge de Frutos, Fruity George, scoring the first goal of the season. Villarreal also beating Rayo Oviedo 2-0. Then on Saturday, Barcelona went to Mallorca and won 3-0. Alaves beat Levante 2-1. And Valencia and Real Sociedad played out a 1-1 draw. Then on Sunday, big win for Getafe at Celta Vigo. They were down to the bare bones. Getafe didn't have too many players, but they still managed to go to Galicia and win 2-0. Athletic Club beat Sevilla 3-2 in Bilbao. And Espanyol came from behind to beat Atletico Madrid 2-1 at Cornellà just a few hours ago, basically. Two games still to go on Matchday 1. We've got one on Monday night, Elche against Betis, and one on Tuesday night, Real Madrid against Osasuna. Now that the season is underway, we're back to our regular schedule at patreon.com/TSFP. So what better time to join us? Patrons get the Monday pod and the Friday preview pod without any ads. They get the Tuesday Q&A pod and the Thursday bonus pod every single week during the season. And we're also making the weekly TSFP newsletter available for all patrons. And there's also our brand new content, which is TSFP's weekly diary, which is a behind the scenes look at what it's like to be covering Spanish football / a rambling voice note from either Sid, me, or Al. But we think it's going to be good. So come and join us. You can be a patron from €4.75 a month. Sydney, you've been at 3 games so far this season. Villarreal, Oviedo, Mallorca, Barça, and Espanyol, Atleti. We'll start with Oviedo because I guess we won't do that too many times this season. In the first half, with Oviedo already 2-0 down, the TV cameras cut to you and your family, Sid, in the stadium. Got a lovely surprise. You were looking pretty dejected.
Dear me. So one of the things that happened in the build-up to this game was kind of before the game, more than anything else, and talking to friends around the ground. There was a lot of Oviedo fans there. There wasn't kind of the recurring conversation was, "Wow, we're in the first division." This is pre-game outside the ground, sort of looking up the ground, like, we're actually here. We're actually in the first division. And then 10 minutes into the game, it was, we're in the first division. This is another level again. It's really quite difficult. And you know, obviously, it's not just playing a first division team. It's playing Villarreal, who are a Champions League team, a very, very good Champions League team as well, who was so superior to Real Oviedo in the opening 10 or 15 minutes that it was really quite something. Aaron Escandé, the Oviedo goalkeeper, had already made, I think, 4 very good saves. And then suddenly they gifted us a ridiculous penalty, really silly penalty. They made a mess of the only time I think that Oviedo kicked the ball roughly in the direction of the Villarreal half. And it ended up with a penalty. You think, I don't believe this. We're in the first division and we're about to be given the lead. Maybe somehow by some kind of miracle we'll hang on to this. And then it's fair to say the penalty really was not very good from Solomon Rondon. An easy save. And then Villarreal got the 2 goals that they deserved and possibly would have got more had they needed more at some point in the game. The game then drifted. But yes, I think that more than anything else, this was the game that kind of reminded us that for all the excitement, and by the what it's worth, I'd said before the game to people, listen, I don't care if we lose 5-0 today. Now, obviously, I knew that wasn't true. I did care if we lost 5-0, but it really sort of didn't matter. In that it was about saying, "Wow, we're actually here. Let's see if we can compete." For the beginning part of this game, at least for the first half of this game, maybe a little bit more, Oviedo just didn't, and then the second half wasn't really much of a game at all.
Worth mentioning that Oviedo played the majority of the game with 10 men as well, which I guess conditioned things.
Did you notice, by the way, I would like to hand up, everyone's going to accuse us of bias all year, and they'll be absolutely right. We will be completely biased. By the way, I'm glad that you haven't opened this pod, or disappointed maybe that you haven't opened this pod by pointing out that Rayo Vallecano are joint top and Real Oviedo are joint bottom. So at the moment, there is an entire league between our two teams. But so I didn't hide behind the red card, which I must admit I thought was a little bit harsh in that it was for 2 yellows. It was really quite early. Generally speaking, a referee would try and back away from giving the second one. I suppose, rule book in hand, it was the right decision. But yeah, it didn't help. And also, I was very impressed with Villarreal. And the sad thing, I think, is that sitting where we were, as you say, the cameras picked us up partly because I think we're in a part of the ground that was easy to pick us up. Sitting where we were, which is the end that Villarreal were attacking the first half. And it's a pity that this is what I'm going to say, because he then went off injured very, very early. Gerard Moreno's a hell of a player up close. His ability to bring people onto him, to be seemingly surrounded by defenders, and then find a way of turning away from it, find a way of finding teammates. And Villarreal have so many runners in the team. They're a really athletic team, a really dynamic team. To be honest, Oviedo couldn't really live with that.
Story of his career, really. He went off.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Yeah.
Okay, so Oviedo losing their first game back in the Primera División. Next up, it's Real Madrid.
Yeah, nice easy one. That'll be fine.
Yeah. Let's see how they get on. You'll be heading up to the Tartiere after the first home game back in nearly a quarter of a century, so that should be pretty decent, even if you lose 5-0, Sid. Let's move on and talk about another game that you were at. We're doing this sort of in chronological order. We can talk about Mallorca 0, Barcelona 3, and there is obviously stuff to talk about from this game. Barcelona winning thanks to goals from Rafinha, Ferran Torres and Lamine Yamal. First goal as an adult for Lamine Yamal. And if I tell you Lamine Yamal scored, you can imagine what goal it was. You can literally picture it in your head. It was the Lamine Yamal goal, cutting in from the right and finishing brilliantly with the left. But before we talk about those kind of stuff, and you guys know that we don't like to dwell on refereeing decisions, unlike almost everyone else in this country, but it has been quite polemic, quite controversial. The second goal scored by Barcelona, because Ferran Torres scored it while Antonio Rayo, the Mallorca defender, was sprawled on the ground, having cleared a shot with his head. Everybody expected the referee to blow up. The referee looked like he might be blowing up, but he didn't, and Ferran shot and ended up with a second goal. And from there on, it felt like Barcelona were always going to win, particularly when Mallorca lost their heads and started getting people sent off. What was your feeling on the decision, Sid, before we go into the analysis of the game?
Yeah, okay. So let me tell you, my feeling on the decision was different to what my feeling on the decision is now. And my feeling on the decision was that the referee had made the right decision, because I don't think you could be stopping the game when someone heads a ball away. And this wasn't a ball in the face. It wasn't 2 meters away. It was a guy heading the ball away. But it is true that he kind of stumbled forward and hit the ground. But I kind of thought, actually, it's a good decision and probably a brave one. The reason why I've changed my mind is 2 things. One, I've seen more clearly how the referee appeared to have blown his whistle, because he kind of leaned forward and went towards the movement and had the whistle in his mouth. And in fact, Arrasate, the Mallorca manager, said post-game that he heard the 4th official saying, blow up, it's a head injury, and actually thought he had. And indeed, when the goal went in, no one really celebrated, because it all felt like it had been stopped. In fact, the Barcelona players kind of weren't really celebrating. So it's as if to say, oh, great shot for pity. It doesn't count. And that's one of the things that made me change my mind. But the most important thing that made me change my mind is actually, according to the protocol, he should have stopped. And I didn't know that. So hands up. The reason I thought it was the right decision was because I had misinterpreted the protocol on head injuries. So he probably should have shot. Ferran Torres produced a brilliant shot, which I think got forgotten in the noise. Is actually how well he took it. Yes. And Mallorca were down. And obviously this was the beginning of the end for them, because although they were already a goal down, this led to the first of the 2 yellow cards for Mateo, who then got sent off. There was then another red card for Murici, which was initially a yellow, but VAR turned it into a red. And so at that point, the game was over. I actually thought Barcelona were pretty good and probably would have won anyway. But of course, you can never know that for sure, can you?
No. No Robert Lewandowski, so Ferran Torres started for Barcelona. And then on came Marcus Rashford in the second half. What did you make of what you saw from him?
What I saw from Marcus Rashford, I think, was a guy coming into a team not entirely ready yet, willing to move, looked a little bit uncomfortable in my view in the fact that he was playing a centre forward. It took a long time for him to get any touches at all. He got 10. I was actually counting them because I was covering this as well. 10 times he got in contact with the ball during the game. There's a couple of times where he actually had a glimpse at goal, one of which he sort of seemed to tread on the ball as he tried to turn back inside, and the other which it was slotted pass through to him, and he didn't respond very quickly to it, so the ball kind of escaped him. And I think in a way that's a portrait of maybe the doubts that we have about him. We think he's a brilliant player running into space. And a couple of times when he was able to influence the game was when he left that centre forward position and kind of went out to the left and then came back in again. And that kind of tight control, tight passing part of the game obviously is I think at least the thing where it might be harder for him to fit. But, it's the first game on a very, very hot night when he comes onto a game that's kind of already done. And so really and truly, I suppose the short answer, having just given you a long one to what was Marcus Rashford's debut like, is not very relevant.
Okay, if you were listening to us over at patreon.com/TSFP in the summer, we had been talking about Lamine Yamal. We had been talking about how good he's been looking in pre-season and how excited we are for the forthcoming campaign. And then he pops up with another absolutely brilliant goal in injury time to round off the victory. Expectations really high this season for Lamine Yamal, aren't they?
Yes, and I've been thinking about this, and I was thinking about this last night a bit. And I think one of the things that we always talk about, the need to reduce expectations on young players and the need to kind of not project onto them what they will be as well as what they already are. And I think sometimes part of the problem becomes this forward projection. There's one very, very significant problem with talking about dropping the expectation on Lamine Yamal is that the one person who's absolutely refusing to drop the expectation on him is him. He's the one that you can call it cockiness if you like, but I suppose, walk the walk and all that. And if you've got it, flaunt it and so on. But he's the one that's embracing all of this, who's just been given the number 10 shirt, but clearly wants it, who celebrates the goal by putting a crown onto his head, who is very, very conscious of kind of saying to people, I'm here for this. I want this responsibility. I want to take this on. I want to prove that I'm better than everybody else. In this game, a very small thing perhaps, but perhaps a worthwhile kind of demonstration of that is that he started taking the free kicks for Barcelona. He didn't do that before. And I think he really either is embracing, absolutely is embracing, not either or, absolutely is embracing, but also absolutely seems to want to embrace the idea of being the star man. And so when we talk about, let's not par the expectations on him, you kind of look to Lamine and say, well, he's doing it to himself. And then obviously, quite apart from that, if you like, that emotional thing and that messaging thing and the imagery and everything that goes with him really seeming to quite like the idea of being a superstar, is the very basic thing, which is he gets on the pitch and he's worth it. He is a phenomenal footballer. And I know that people know this, but when you watch him, and when you watch him up close as well, and it happened this weekend, there are moments, even in those moments of the games when he's quiet, where you just think, wow, there's a touch, there's a speed, there's a quality to get away from people. I was very struck by something that Eric Garcia said to us post-game at ESPN. He talked about, he does this in training all the time. Obviously, that's not an amazing thing to say because we hear that from people about very good players that in training they do this kind of thing all the time. And I suppose it's natural that in training you would repeat something that maybe if you're lucky, you do once in a match. But then he said something about he'd had a confrontation, Lamine Yamal, with Jan Salas just about 2 minutes before he scored. And Salas had a go. He said, what are you complaining about? And he used a word which basically means, it's a stronger version of idiot, put it that way, called it subnormal. And as if to say, you total dickhead. It's a bit worse than that. And Lamine Yamal kind of looked at him. And then next thing he does, he scored this goal. And Eric Garcia said post-game, he'd had an argument with someone the minute before. And as soon as that happened, I knew he was going to score. And here comes the thing. The last person I remember someone saying exactly that about was a little Argentinian guy who also wore number 10 for Barcelona. I remember Pep Guardiola saying, don't anger Messi. Because when you anger Messi, this is how it gives it back to you. This is what happens. And it was phenomenal. And as you say, it was that Lamine Yamal goal. And we talk a lot about how you see it's coming, you know what's coming, but you still can't stop it. I think there's lots of reasons why you can't stop it. I mean, we could settle for the basic one, which is he's very good at it. But I also think it's actually, while it is the goal he scores, it's not necessarily obvious that it's the thing he's going to do. Because when he plays, he doesn't only come inside. It's not the only thing he does. And the reason for this is obviously when you've got a very, very naturally left-footed player on the right-hand side, you say, well, of course he's going to come in because he wants to come in into his left foot. But Lamine Yamal, despite not being particularly good with his right foot, has overcome that in part. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I thought, that's why. Why has he overcome it? And this is one thing that I do think he does better than Messi. He's really good with the outside of his foot. And so because he delivers really good passes, in fact, remember last year, the last time they went to Mallorca, they won 5-1. 2 of the assists, these unbelievable passes with the outside fits from Lamine Yamal. So I think what that means is that the defender in front of him, although he thinks if Lamine Yamal is going to score, it's going to be only one way, that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the play he goes for this time. Because he does also go the other way, partly because he doesn't necessarily run out of pitch at that point. Because although it is true that he doesn't want to use his right foot, he's pretty happy using the outside of his left.
Lamine Yamal better than Messi with the outside of his foot. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. We're going to move on. We didn't talk about Jean Garcia making his debut in goal because there wasn't too much to talk about. There, Barcelona managing to get him and Marcus Rashford registered for this game, which was looking potentially unlikely to get them both registered a few days ago, but there they were making their respective debuts. Let's move on and talk about the other game that you were at this weekend, Sid, as we said a few hours ago, Espanyol. Coming from behind to beat Atletico Madrid. How did this happen, Sid? Because Atleti had this game seemingly very much under control, leading at the break, dominant, and then they didn't.
Right, how did it happen? I think the phrase that Coque kept using post-game was that brilliant Spanish phrase, contundente, which is, when you land a punch or when you try to hit someone, you hit them properly. And so the contundencia is you get a chance, you take it. In your own area, they get a chance, they don't take it, or more to the point, you defend in a decisive way. I suppose decisive is possibly the best word for that, isn't it? Or effective.
Yeah.
And that was Coque's answer. Now, I buy that up to a point, but I don't buy 100%. And it is true that until about 75 minutes, Atletico were in control, and there was a lovely, lovely second half move, which ended up with Julian Alvarez hitting the post. At the end I was at, and I thought it was a bad miss watching it close to me. And I watched it back later on. I was going to say last night, but this night pretty much. And it's an even more extraordinary miss than I thought. And it's a brilliant, brilliant move. And he should score. And at that point, it goes 2-0 if they score. And that's it. And we'd probably now be saying, you know what? This was a really positive, interesting start from Atletico Madrid because they were front-footed. They were trying to take the game higher. There was some quite nice football played at times, particularly from Almada and from Baena, who I thought used the ball really well. Both of them, less so maybe from Giuliano Simeone, but I think we probably expected that. And then they got caught. And they got caught with one set play, really, really badly defended. Rapsodori didn't pick up his man. He'd only just come on the pitch. Maybe that plays a part. It dropped behind an all-man, and he's there all alone at the far post. So all alone at the far post, you almost wonder if he must be offside. How can it be that there's no one there with him unless they've stepped out to leave him offside? It wasn't the case, but it was just a slow reaction and he got caught. Then you get an amazing header from Pedemia. Although I'm not sure if it is a header. Does it hit the back of his head, his neck, his shoulder, somewhere around there? Anyway, it loops up and it goes in and they get caught out. Now, the reason why that would appear to kind of reflect Coque's answer, but I don't agree, is that actually for all their control and all that they played well, I didn't think Atletico Madrid made as much happen in terms of clear chances as they probably should have done. I also didn't think that the 2 goals that Espanyol scored were quite as isolated as it sounds like they were. Now, they were a bit isolated, but it wasn't quite as isolated. I felt that they took a step forward, and it was quite entertaining listening to Marko Dimitrovic last night because, bear in mind, this is a guy that's played with Mendilibar and loves Mendilibar. He essentially said, a couple of big guys up front and sling the ball in the box. So if we're looking for the if you like, the tactical analysis of what changed, it is they went that way. And I thought that Manolo Gonzalez read that quite well. I thought he found a way of causing problems for Atletico Madrid, and Atletico Madrid didn't defend well at all on the first goal. I'm not sure that you can really blame the defending on the second. I think it's just kind of an amazing stroke freak header that they can't deal with. But I actually thought that Espanyol did start to make things happen, particularly delivering crosses. I'd also like to point out at this point, by the way, that on came Dolan, and I really like the look of him. Really dynamic, running at people, trying to make things happen. There was a sense of just kind of things getting livelier when he was around the ball. And Espanyol, I don't want to overplay this because I don't want to fall into the trap of because they won, thinking they were really good. I think that would be a step too far. But I thought their response was good. I thought their start of the game, 5-10 minutes, was good. And I thought their response was good late on. And ultimately, you know, while they may feel, while most people may feel they were possibly a little bit lucky to win, I actually thought they played quite well as well.
Okay. Just going back to Atletico Madrid, looking at their starting 11, 5 new signings in that starting 11, Sid, Hansko, Ruggeri, Cardoso, Baena and Almada, and ultimately not getting a victory. I think we've spoken about this before, but in the opening 11 games of last season, Atletico Madrid only won 5 of those 11 games. And actually, if you look at those 5 wins, 2 of them were injury time goals, and they actually picked up a draw, scoring in injury time as well. So in those opening few games, things weren't necessarily working for them.
A caveat there, which is they played very well in the first half, and Simeone made 2 halftime substitutions, which was to take off Gallagher and Cardoso. So, all right, only one of those.
Does this feel different to that?
Oh, good. Well, okay. Well, I'm sorry, I've preempted your question then. So he takes off Gallagher.
You should know me after
I should,
years.
Gallagher and Cardoso at halftime. Now, admittedly, only one of those 2 is new. But that was a midfield that I thought was working well, that was dynamic, that was making things happen. It was interesting watching Almada, by the way, drop in and play, and then that allowed Conor Gallagher to kind of bomb on forwards, which I think is what he's most good at. He's not really a game-controlling midfielder, although I think Johnny Cardoso can do a bit of that. Gallagher's not really. He's more a sort of a dynamic midfielder, that llegada that we always talk about, the ability to arrive in the area at the right time and so on. And Simeone changed both of those and put on Barrios and Koke. And to be honest, I thought that made that middle of midfield a bit more plodding. Now, with Koke, who, by the way, looks very slim. I actually thought he looked unusually skinny, if anything, post-game. But they lost some of that dynamism. Now, I don't want to overplay that, because for 20 minutes in the second half, it was still fine. And they were still the better team. But I thought that was a strange decision. I thought it was striking how early he took off Baena. I thought it was striking that he took off Julian Alvarez when he needed to change the game. When his solution was to go to Sorloth, but they didn't really get a cross into the box for Sorloth to try and head, which, of course, there's the Espanyol plan, but only half of it. And so I think you possibly can point the finger at Simeone a little bit, but I feel like that would be a bit facile. And Simeone, I love what Simeone said post-game, by the way, because Simeone said, we played very well. He said, but I, of all people, can't, if you like, ignore the result to talk about how we played, because, of course, he knows he's made an entire career out of talking about what matters is, what the final score is.
And the final score was Espanyol 2, Atletico Madrid 1. So points dropped on Matchday 1 for Atleti. Quick word about a game which I didn't actually see in its entirety, but there was a man of the match performance from Nico Williams. Nico Williams with a goal, assist and a standing ovation for Athletic Club in their 3-2 win over Sevilla. They were 2-0 up, then let Sevilla back into it before scoring to get a deserved victory at Athletic Club. And it feels like, after everything that happened in the summer, this was important for Nico to put in this kind of performance and get that kind of response from the crowd.
Absolutely, it was. And it was a goal and an assist. He won the penalty that he scored. Actually, I think it's a goal and 2 assists. I don't understand why he's not given the assist for the other one. I suppose there's a possibility that he was shooting. But it looks to me like a cross that takes a deflection. And the move that he does before the assist that doesn't count as assist is superb. It was a brilliant performance from him. Here we are talking about Lamine Yamal. He actually Nico played at a similar level, I think, to Lamine Yamal this time around. There was and with that desire to show himself, that desire to take responsibility. I love the footage. I don't know if you've seen the footage of Iñaki Williams when they score the penalty. So Iñaki's standing there on the penalty spot with the ball under his arm, looking for all the world like a father who's waited too long for his teenage son to come home. He's there going, come on then. Nico comes over, gives him a penalty, scores, and then of course, they embrace and stuff. And the whole stadium is chanting for Nico to take it. So I think there's that sense of all of them together, collectively wanting Nico to perform. I think partly through an awareness at Athletic of some need to fix what happened in the summer, if you see what I mean. Because... How do I put this? When he looked like he was going to go, he got quite a lot of abuse for it. There was a lot of people who turned in Bilbao, a lot of people who turned their back on it. Famously, of course, the mural that there is, it's in Getxo, I think. I can't remember where it is. Maybe it's not Getxo. I can't remember where it was now. There's a mural of the team and him and his brother on there, and that got defaced. In fact, when he announced his renewal, they did this renewal video of him sneaking up with a hood and defacing the mural himself, but writing the date of his new contract on it. And so I think there was a sense of, to use the classic football story arc of redemption, of trying to fix things, and his performance level was phenomenal. At the end, he was exhausted. There's a lovely moment where he goes to the bench and he just does it as he's been taken off. He does this gesture as if to say, "Not a minute more.
No
I
more.
cannot do anymore." Having had his brother trying to stretch his calves for him because the cramp is creeping up his legs. I thought this was a brilliant performance from him.
Yes, and important for Athletic Club to get off to a victory at home in a game which looked like they were going to win, then it looked like they might throw it away, and finally they picked up all 3 points. Got to mention Rayo, as you said, being joint top of the table. Won't last, obviously, but this was a big first half performance from Rayo, aided magnificently by the Girona goalkeeper Paulo Gazzaniga, who put in a wonderfully comic performance. He was just extraordinarily bad, gifting the first goal and then getting himself sent off and giving away a penalty as well for Rayo just before half-time. And I think Rayo might not be relegated this season. Yeah, I've said it. I think they might not be relegated.
Well, I was going to say good on you, but I kind of need them to be, because I've been desperately scraping around trying to work out if there's 3 teams worse than Real Oviedo. And I hate to say this, but
Spoiler.
I had a little bit of hope that Rayo could be one of them. If purely for mathematical reasons, I really hope it's not them. I just hope there's still 3 more.
That's a bit mean.
It's not mean. It's just needs, isn't it? I need there to be 3 worse teams.
Oh, right. Okay. Fair enough.
But I'm actually glad it's not Rayo. I do think they might have difficulties this year, but this was a very, very good start, as you say, helped a lot by Gazzaniga. I mean, they're comically bad, the 2 errors.
Still haven't signed a striker, Rayo, which is very, very difficult to get your head around. They're absolutely crying out for a striker. They're playing Jorge de Frutos through the middle. He's not a striker. He's not a central forward, but the manager said that he likes him there. He can use him there. He thinks he's got the attributes to play there and maybe develop his game in a more central role. But just go out and sign a bloody striker, please. Please. Come on.
Well, rather Thomas could come back.
We've just gone to Qatar, just got rid of him. Don't need him back. Get someone who can actually run and score. That would be good. We don't need to talk about Segunda anymore, Sid, for the first time since we started doing this podcast.
It's terrible, but I was thinking that this weekend. I was thinking, I don't know what happened in Segunda. Well, I do know. I know that Depor won and played very well. I know that was a really good interview with Ivan Alejo on the radio at the weekend after Valladolid had won. So yeah, there you go. Right. Some stuff happened.
Some big results on the first weekend in Segunda. There were heavy defeats for 2 promoted sides. Cultural Leonesa lost 5-1 in their local derby against Burgos, and Ceuta lost 3-0 at Valladolid. Elsewhere, Racing beat Castellón 3-1, and Depor won 3-1 at Granada. If you haven't seen it, check out Depor's first goal. Mario Soriano finishing off a move which included 2 back heels. Exquisite piece of football. So go and check that out. We're going to leave it there for the first podcast of the season because Sydney has to run and catch a train as he usually tends to do. But we're going to be over at patreon.com/TSFP for the rest of the week. Q&A podcast out tomorrow, bonus podcast out on Friday. Loads of content there, the newsletter too. So come and join us. It's only €4.75 a month. And if you don't want to do that, then join us on Friday for the bonus pod. See you then, amigos. Adios.
Cheerio.